Assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so Om Gana Tivinadasha Gananjana Shlakya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So I'd like to thank you all for welcoming me here. It's good to be here again. Does anyone have any specific topics you'd like to hear about tonight, or I can pick a topic myself?
Laura's appearance is coming up. We talked about that much.
Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Okay, what about Lord Chaitanya's appearance?
Some stories? Good stories?
Stories, okay. Once upon a time. I'll tell a little philosophy about Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Of course, we are all followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we are hopefully performing what's called the Yuga Dharma. Yuga Dharma means the process of religion, or not supposed to say, Dharma doesn't really mean religion. It really means the essential quality of something, the eternal quality of something that cannot be separated from the object. In other words, the essential quality of the soul is what? Service to Krishna. Jivara Sarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. That's the essential quality of the soul. So, the Yuga Dharma enables one to connect to that essential quality of the soul. And so this Yuga Dharma now is Kalayar Dosha Dhanei Raja Nashi Ego Mahaguna. Kirtana Devi Krishna Shel Mukta Sangha Paramajat. Because we're all so unfortunate, short-lived, memory's very short, and so the only solution is what? Kirtana Devi Krishna Shel Mukta Sangha Paramajat. You go back to home, back to God. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared well over 500 years ago. I know the devotees often say 500 years ago, and they've been saying that for the last 30 years. Anyway. But you know, things change. It's about 520 some odd, or 530 years ago. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared with the secondary purpose of teaching the Yuga Dharma. Now, for those of us who are in Krishna consciousness, that's the primary purpose. The Yuga Dharma, perform Sankirtan. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had his own personal purposes. And his own personal purposes involved his relationship as Krishna with Srimati Radharani. Because the interesting thing about pure devotional service is the devotee enjoys more than Krishna does. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Actually, everything he does is for his enjoyment, which is interesting. We had that question this morning. I just want to get a little bit off the topic right now. We had a question this morning in class about, and also last night, that if Krishna does all these things for his enjoyment, I thought you said, the question you raised this morning was that Krishna is Atma Ram. He takes pleasure in himself. He doesn't need anything else for his enjoyment. And Krishna is Atma Ram. And he's also Aptakama, and he's also Swarat, three different things. Aptakama means he gets whatever he wants whenever he wants it. I don't. Whatever I want. Although people have come up with this philosophy called the secret. You ever heard of this before? Where if you want something enough, the universe becomes your servant. That's basically it, the secret. So, basically, but Krishna is like that. The universe is Krishna's servant. All of Krishna's energies are his servants. And he gets whatever he wants. Plus, he doesn't need anything to be happy. That means he's Atmaram, he's taking pleasure in himself. Doesn't need you, or even me to be happy. So, the question is, then that's a pretty dull God. if you just explain, then it's just like Shantaras. You understand? Shantaras means someone who's just like Shanta, or peaceful, Shanti. Peaceful. And he doesn't need anyone or anything else. But Krishna, in one sense, doesn't need anyone or anything else. However, he wants us. So that's a real mystery. If he doesn't need anything, why does he want us? Because generally in this world, we are thinking when we want something that we need something. You understand? Let's say I go to work, because I'm not working, I'm retired. But let's say I go to work to make money. So I'm not doing it simply because I like to work. I'm doing it because I want money. So in other words, there's always some motive behind whatever anyone does in this world to fulfill a particular need. Even, because as sannyasi I can talk like this, but even if a man and woman get married, they're actually fulfilling different needs. You know, need for companionship and other things like that. So a Christian doesn't have those needs, which is interesting. But he loves us that so much that he wants us for our own benefit to be with him. That's love. In other words, Krishna doesn't need us, but he's loving us so much, like that story in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Krishna says to Gopakumar that I was wondering when you're going to come back to me. I even became your spiritual master and appeared in various places to help you, to bring you back. And finally you've come back to me. Then Krishna fainted in ecstasy when Gopakumar came back and they embraced each other, rolled on the ground. So in other words, that's real love. Real love is when you don't need something from someone and you still want them to be happy. And the closest thing to that, of course, is the mother's love for the child. And I gave the example, actually I was thinking about this last night. Like my mother, for example, I'm not saying it's pure love, but the only thing she remembers, she's 92 years old, the only thing she remembers is me. She doesn't remember where she is. She doesn't remember what time of the day it is. She doesn't remember that even that she was married before. I mean, that's how I came about it, obviously. But she doesn't remember she had a husband or a boyfriend or anything like that. But she remembers me because that's the closest thing to love. So Krishna's love for us is something like that. Of course, it's absolutely pure. And therefore, Krishna's making all the arrangements for us to come back to him. Interesting. Even though he's up to kama, his own desires fulfilled. Swarat means he's independent. And Atmaram, which means he's self-satisfied or takes pleasure in himself. So that's Krishna. So anyway, so getting back to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really wanted to understand Srimati Radharani, or Krishna wanted to understand Srimati Radharani. And in order to do that, he had to take her position. He wanted to understand her, he wanted to understand the love she experienced for him, and he wanted to experience the happiness that Srimati Radharani experiences. So therefore he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that's why he's called Gauranga, and Radharani is called Gaurangi, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radharani Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamani Haripriya. So that's Gauranga Gaurangi, and that's the reason for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. Now, as far as stories, I mean, I could tell a lot of stories about his childhood. I don't know if it's philosophical, but I can tell stories. So once upon a time, And this proves that Lord Chaitanya is God. Once upon a time, a itinerant Brahmin was coming to the house of Jagannath Mishra. Jagannath Mishra, of course, is the father of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sachimata is the mother. So this Brahmana was coming, and in those days, when the Brahmana would come to someone's house, the Brahmana would be allowed to cook for himself. Because, as Prabhupada stated in one class, that generally the strict Brahmins in India, they would always cook for themselves. And some of them would not even have their wives cook for them, they would just cook for themselves. And Prabhupada said even in the army, the Indian army, when somehow or other the Brahmins joined the Indian army, there would be some arrangement for individual kitchens for the Brahmins to cook for themselves, the soldiers who happened to be the Brahmin caste. So this Brahmin came to the house of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jagannath Mishra's house, and they said, well, you're going to have some arrangement for cooking for yourself. So they made some arrangement. He cooked for himself and got ready to offer it to his deity. And then all of a sudden, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came up and grabbed the offering. You know that story. And then the Brahmana just got very upset because that contaminates the offering for someone else to touch the offering before it's offered. And so one Brahman wouldn't eat it at that point. And Jagannath Mishra, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father, said, why don't you cook again? Here's all the ingredients to cook again. And this time we'll lock up Lord Chaitanya, we'll lock up Nima. We'll lock him up so he can't come out. So they locked him in his room, and somehow or other he did come out, and somehow or other he ate the offering before the Brahmin got a chance to offer it. And so Jagannath Mishra was so angry he was chasing Lord Chaitanya, and he might find it around, but beat him. And the Brahmin said, don't do this, it's just Krishna's arrangement. Krishna doesn't want me to eat today, that's all right. And so the family was very upset, because if you invite someone to your house and they don't eat or you don't feed them, it's considered a great insult. In fact, Prabhupada said, if you want to get rid of an unwanted guest, just don't feed them. Prabhupada is like a cold too, like a fever, isn't it? Don't feed it, goes away. Don't feed the guest, goes away. Or in this case, they feed me too much, so it has to go away. Anyway, so sometimes the devotees from Fiji, they think it's good hospitality to give you a giant plate with 500 preparations and they give you a stomachache the next day. So that's the opposite. That's why you're getting rid of someone.
Are you up, Mara?
I'm not up. So that, anyways, so what happened is that they waited some time, and then it was about 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night, close to midnight, and the family was begging, you gotta eat, so, and he's sleeping. He's not gonna get up. Don't worry. So the Brahmin cooked again, and he got ready to make the offering, and lo and behold, little Nimai crawled up to the altar and he ate it. And the Brahmin got really upset. Everyone else was sleeping. And Nimai said, what's the problem? You're calling me to eat. And I'm coming. And then he displayed his form as the Supreme Personality of God, and the Brahmin started jumping in ecstasy, rubbing the rice all over his body. And everyone was still sleeping. And Nimai said, don't reveal to anyone the story. This is from Chaitanya Bhagavad, of course. Don't reveal to anyone the story. If you do, you'll be ruined. It's like a threat. So how do we know the story? That's kind of, I always wondering about that. Because you have all these stories that, and also the conquering Pandit, Digvijay, the same thing. Nimai said, don't tell anyone about it, and if you tell anyone about it, you'll be ruined. Somehow or other we know about it. But anyway, I guess they waited until Lord Chaitanya left this planet, because Lord Chaitanya left this planet at 48 years of age. In a very short span on this earth planet. So, that's one story. Actually, one of my favorite stories is the story from the Chaitanya Mangal regarding Narada Muni and the Mahaprasadam. And that story goes as follows. Once upon a time, Narada Muni saw the residents of Kali Yuga, and he was feeling great compassion for the residents of Kali Yuga. And so he went to Krishna and Dwarka and said, what are we going to do? And somehow or other went to the spiritual Dwarka, because obviously. And Krishna revealed his form as Gora to Narada Muni. And then Narada Muni was told to inform all the demigods to appear, and that's what he did. In addition, he really wanted to get Mahaprasadam. This is in the beginning of Chaitanya Mangal. That Narada Muni wanted to eat Mahaprasadam, but he wasn't able to get it for some reason or other, because at that point, Lakshmi had been instructed by Narayan not to give a Mahaprasadam to anybody. And so he served Lakshmi for something like 10 years. And Lakshmi said, whatever you want, I'll give you. And he said, I want Mahaprasadam. But Lakshmi said, I've been ordered by Lord Narayan not to give Mahaprasadam. So she had a conflict there. Should I give? Should I not give? Eventually she goes to Lord Narayan, and Lord Narayan says, just do it when I'm not looking. Yeah, and so he gets this Mahaprasadam and eats it and starts dancing in ecstasy from eating Mahaprasadam. Actually, it's interesting that we in the Krishna consciousness movement take prasadam every day, but we don't appreciate it really. I mean, the first time I remember eating prasadam, it was just like, wow, what's this? This is amazing. But then after, 50 years of eating prasadam, it was like, okay, what's for dinner? We don't remember, even though we may say the prasadam prayer, Surya, which nobody knows the translation of. O Lord, this material body is a place of ignorance, and the sensitive networks are past, leading to death. But you, Lord Krishna, and of all the senses of the tongue is the most gracious and uncontrollable. But you, Lord Krishna, are so very kind, you send us this Mahaprasadam. So let us take this Mahaprasadam and love call out for Lord Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, help us. That's the translation. Actually, in the beginning days, we used to say that in English all the time. And that way you remember how amazing Mahaprasadam is. But we don't. We just think, food. For us, the word prasad has become synonymous with the word food. But actually, prasad means the mercy of the Lord. So Narada Muni, he took that, he was dancing in ecstasy, and his brother, Lord Shiva, said, what are you doing? And Narada Muni said, I got some Mahaprasadam. And Lord Shiva said, did you save any for me? And Narada Muni said, no. Just ate everything on his plate. And so then Narada Muni looked under his fingernail, and there was a little Mahaprasadam. Lord Shiva took it, and he started dancing in ecstasy. And that dance sort of resembled the Tandava and Richa. That means the dance of the end of the cosmic creation, the cosmic devastation. So he was dancing, and everything was starting to tilt. The whole world, and when he dances is pretty heavy. And Parvati, Durga, she was so concerned with the fate of all of her children. Actually, we're her children, in case you didn't know. Ma Durga. It's a fact. Why is that? Why do we say we're her children? Because at the time of the cosmic creation, Lord Vishnu, the Mahavishnu, looked at the Pradhana, Pradhana means the unmanifested stage of the three modes of material nature, like clay, something like that. And he had implanted the souls, that's us, in case you haven't figured that out. Because we were lying in a dormant state within Lord Vishnu's body. That when the creation was dissolved, we entered to Lord. It's not that we were created at some point. Some people talk like that. It says the soul was created at a certain point, and Prabhupada was very strong on this point. The soul is never created and destroyed. Krishna is very strong on the point. Jayate Vrichu. Nayam Bhutva Bhavita Na Bhuyaha. The soul is never created or destroyed, doesn't die, isn't born. So anyway, so he glances at the material creation. That glance is known in the Brahma Samhita as Shambhu. That's the name of Lord Shiva. So Aikshata means a glance. And that's Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva consorts with Maya, another name for Durga, Parvati. And so in other words, we're planted within the womb of Durga, this material creation. I mean, in a real sense, I mean. And so she's the mother of all of our bodies. It's interesting. It's not that we all look like her. You know, like, I look at Kishori and Sringananda's children, they look like him. They don't look like her.
So Big Daddy is like, children from Big Daddy.
What's that?
Children from Big Daddy.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, same thing, right?
Same thing, yeah. So we actually are, anyway, we're implanted within the womb of the material nature, and Durga's our mother. So Durga asked Lord Shiva to stop, because, Lord Shiva was getting ready to destroy the whole universe. And he gets angry at her. He says, "Why'd you tell me to stop?" She said, "We're getting ready to destroy the whole universe." And she said, "By the way, why were you dancing?" And he says, "I got some Mahaprasadam, a little speck of Mahaprasadam." We don't understand how powerful it is, Mahaprasadam. Isn't it? I mean, we just don't understand. I mean, we're not appreciative of how lucky we are to be able to eat the remnants of Krishna. So anyway, so she says, "Did you save any for me?" And he says, "No, you're Maya." You're basically Maya, You are Maya. And you're the material energy, It's like, the name of Vedic culture, the men insult their wives so many times, Sometimes they say, "You're an agent of Maya." I remember the old days in the Hare Krishna movement, it wasn't a time of equality. It was a time of chauvinism, the International Society for Chauvinistic Krishna Consciousness. Then at one particular point, a devotee made a proposal to the GBC. It was in America, to ship all the women and householders to Australia. That's how you all got here. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Because, Australia's a penal colony, so send all those wretched souls, Of course, Prabhupada shot down that proposal pretty quickly. So, anyway, so Durga Devi was really, I would say, offended and upset. I mean, it's a pastime. She's a pure devotee. She's Vaishnavi. Not that Vaishnavi. She's Vaishnavi. That's the name of Durga, Vaishnavi. So many different names. She has actually 1,008 names. So then she did austerities and caused Lord Vishnu to appear, or attracted Lord Vishnu to appear. And she said, "I want Mahaprasadam to be distributed to all my children." That's all of us. And therefore, that's what happened. With Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advent, then all of us get some Mahaprasadam. Very interesting. So, anyway, those are stories about Lord Chaitanya's appearance. One thing I wanted to talk about was how to achieve well-being in this world. It's interesting, because I've been studying about this the last 50 years. But anyway.
What books are we talking about?
Krishna consciousness, all the books.
Yeah.
So recently I've come across something. I'm going to relate this to a mundane topic, just as a warning for all of you, so you don't think I'm completely in Maya. So anyway, so I like mundane topics because they make me feel part of this mundane world. So anyway, so no, I like them because I use them for building bridges. So people can understand Krishna consciousness. Because a lot of the people I talk to, actually the majority of people I talk to, are highly educated. So
you were going to be an engineer at one point, right?
yeah, I was going to be an engineer in a choo-choo train. No, that no. So in the past I've studied microbiology to explain to people the principle of life comes from life, which probably considered very important. So I have all sorts of presentations on that. So I was studying well-being, which is different than happiness. And I came across this interesting field dealing with well-being. It's called positive psychology. Anyone's heard of it before? Now, most of the time
We tried to avoid the positive.
What?
We tried to avoid the positive as much as possible.
Yeah, we try to be negative. This material world, you go to a Sunday feast lecture, it's not, at least in the old days, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, Kuka, Doshana Darshanam, everything's miserable from the highest planet to the lowest planet. Beauty, you've heard this lecture before. Beauty is only skin deep. You peel the skin off, that's your beloved, just like peel it off. Then you're just a bag of stool.
Sorry, there's so many people joining up.
You think being romantic means to embrace a bag of stool and doing whatever, passive mucus. Really, it's called scatological, like that. Or recently on my Facebook page, they're trying to make this material world nice is like putting lipstick on a pig. If you go on my Facebook page, you'll actually see, I put a picture of a pig with lipstick on it. Anyone see that?
Yeah, and I thought, oh my goodness.
But that's a typical example. So that's, you go to the Hare Krishna movement, these people are so positive here. So positive. And then you go to the Bhagavatam class and everyone's sleeping, So.
When Prashadam is announced.
Oh, everyone's positive. Yeah, I was listening to a class where Prabhupada was talking about chanting 16 rounds. And the devotee asked him, what if we can't chant our rounds? And Prabhupada said, you have to chant them the next day. And Prabhupada said, if you don't, you're not a human being. At least for someone who's taken initiation, made a promise. And then Prabhupada said, you don't forget to eat, do you? You don't forget to sleep. So Prabhupada is very heavy in that regard. So anyway, so we have a lot of this negative stuff, and it's not so attractive. So I was thinking how to present Krishna consciousness using positive psychology. It's a whole branch of psychology, because generally psychology tends to be negative also, right? Like they have this thing called the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual. And they have the different versions, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And so, you can say to someone, you're schizophrenic. You can diagnose people. So it's like negative Krishna consciousness. It's like,
He's just dealing with the mechanics, that's all.
yeah, well, it's basically negative. What's your problem, buddy? So we tend to be negative too. You're so attached. You're so attached to that family. So attached to that car. So attached to your mobile phone. You're so attached. you're like like Indra when he became a pig. You know that story? Indra was cursed to become a pig. He became a pig, and he was there with his whole like big family, his sow, his wife, and his little piglets, and he was needed, he was needed back in the heaven, you know, because he does some work. It's not that he just watches dancing girls all day long. You know, people want to become Indra, but you got to work once you're Indra, because you're the administrative head of the universe. So Indra. So anyway, so what happened is that Lord Brahma comes down and says, you know, Indra, it's time to go back. And Indra says, I have so much responsibilities here, you know, just like, forget it, you know, and it's fun here. You know, we have nice food every day, stool. And so, finally, it's arranged that, you know, his whole, they're living in a farm, you know, in which they kill pigs. And so his whole family gets killed, and he says, well, it's time to take some yas. He goes back to the he goes back to the heavenly planets to do his service. And so
Who put him in that?
What's that?
Another movie or something was involved?
so a sage cursed him because he messed around with someone's wife, which is part of
Well,
Indra's.
Narad Muni himself had a pretty bad memory of the trip when he had to go back and enjoy it, didn't he, at some point?
Yeah.
You just triggered that thought there, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's a different story. So Indra goes back. But it's not an impetus to take up devotional service. So I was thinking, how do we present things using psychology, you know, rather than say that, you know, you're just sick. You got to see a psychiatrist. And for years, psychology has just dealt with bringing you from a -10 to a 0. You understand what I mean? Rather than positive. So there's this whole new branch of what's called positive psychology that talks about how to increase your well-being. So anyway, so there are certain principles in this positive psychology thing too. The principles are called PERMA. This is a lesson. You take notes. PERMA. PERMA is an acronym. So what it stands for, and I'll go over one by one, and how it's really in line with Krishna consciousness. The first one is just like your personal sense gratification. I'm not saying that brings happiness. So the psychologists have analyzed that when you try to just gratify your senses, same thing as Krishna says in the Gita, I mean, it's really much in line with Krishna consciousness. When you try to gratify your senses, then they're never satisfied because you need more and more gratification. Like a person wants more and... Haribol, good to see you. Good to see you again. So a person wants more and more money, a person wants more, and it's never satisfied. Avartam jnanam etena jnanino nishvayana kamarupena kontiya dushprena adalena cha. So that's, you know, they say that's one way the one gets happiness. Well, we're not talking about happiness, they say. I'm quoting them. We're talking about well-being. Because material happiness has a beginning and an end, and the wise man does not delight it. It's Krishna's words, not the psychology. I'm just mixing right now modern psychology with all right, so they say, well, then the next thing, they say, well, really that doesn't, you need a positive attitude. That's true. I just want to continue with the discussion. But not that you think that the sense enjoyment will bring you happiness or well-being. Positive attitude is important. How does one maintain a positive attitude? I hope I don't go too long with this, because I've been preparing this whole seminar in my mind, just testing it out on you now. So a positive attitude for us means to see Krishna everywhere and everything. That even if something happens, there's a reason for it. Something happens to us. There's a reason. Yomam Pashati Sarvatra Savam Shamai Pashati Tashaham Na Pranashami Sachame Na Pranashati. Buddha sees me everywhere and everything in me is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. So this is how one can see everything. So the P in the beginning, we talk about perma, like permanent, but it's just perma. That means to see Krishna everywhere, rather than try to enjoy the senses. And then the next one is after P is E. And E means engagement or absorption, or as they say nowadays, being with the flow. You've heard of this expression here, like the flow? Anybody's heard about it?
Nowadays, that's been around for 60 years.
Yeah, sorry about that. Nowadays, for me, nowadays was 1912. So, so being with the flow or in the zone. You ever heard of this? That's more common. In the zone. It's like if someone's a musician and they're really into the music and everything, like they get in the zone. And what happens when you're in the zone? Time and space. Well, it's not necessarily smart. Time and space disappear because you're in the zone. Anybody who's like a musician would know what I'm talking about. Or if you're any field, like if you're a doctor, and you're just taking out someone's kidneys or something. Which doctor? So anyway. Or you're absorbed. It means absorbed in the zone. We all experience that at certain times when, like at a good kirtan, or hearing Krishna Katha, we're really in the zone. We forget who we are, where we are, what we're going to do tomorrow, and all that other stuff. Okay, so that's an important part of being a well-being. And in Krishna consciousness, we have that if you're in the zone serving Krishna, there's an interesting verse in the Gita. Brahmarpanam Brahmahaveya Brahmagno Brahmanavatam Brahmatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samana. That if one is absorbed in the service to Krishna, that service is actually non-different than Krishna. It's spiritual. The service, the person doing the service, perhaps some of you remember that verse in the Gita. That, and everything becomes immersed in Brahman. So that's another important point of happiness, or well-being. Let's use well-being. To be immersed in Krishna consciousness, to be absorbed, a full contribution to Brahman, to be in the zone in Krishna consciousness. So that's a positive step there. So I get further into that, but let's just go on to the R. R refers to having relationship. And of course, we have a relationship with Krishna. Of course, the positive psychologists, they just talk about having like a relationship with your cat, with your dog. And it's interesting, as I present in my book, that I'm citing some scientific studies. The people who have relationships, good relationships with their mother, father, wife, or even pets, they live longer and don't get sick so much. It's really interesting. Another thing, it's really interesting that these positive psychologists have done in their analyses. They take tens of thousands of people's Twitter accounts. You have Twitter? No, none of you know what it is. Okay.
We do.
Isn't that a bird?
We know that, okay.
Isn't that a bird?
No, it's like Instagram or Facebook.
I know.
It's just like
I'm joking.
it's like short statements whereby you can insult people. So they take
What's new?
they analyze and compare the Twitter accounts and the negative words that people are using, and they can compare that to the disease rates that the people have. And it's interesting, the more negative words that people use on Twitter, or in the internet, Facebook, whatever. I don't know what else, Instagram, or whatever. What?
TikTok.
Oh, TikTok.
That's another one.
TikTok is illegal for government employees
Don't you have to call a spade a spade?
because it's Chinese. Yes, but there's ways of looking at things. There's ways of looking at things. Instead of saying that someone's in Maya, you just say, you know, I'm compassionate towards you. I see you as a devotee. You know, there's different ways you could look at the same thing. So the people who have the most negative words, and it turns out that men have more negative words than women anyway, especially the nice 4-letter words, which we will mention. So they analyze those people, those locations. Those people have the most diseases. Interesting, really.
Does that tie back to firma and relationships? Therefore, they don't.
Yeah, it has to do with relationships.
Doesn't have very good relationships.
Yeah, well, or they just have an attitude towards the world. Even if they have relationships, their attitude towards the relationships is abusive, is critical, or whatever. So it affects the health. So not even the spirituality. So, of course, we have our relationship with Krishna. We're supposed to love Krishna, and we're supposed to love everybody. Actually, it says in the Upanishad, was it Yastu Sarvani Bhutani Atmane Vanam Pashati Sarvabhuteshu Chatmanam Bhutani, that a devotee of Krishna doesn't hate anyone, in fact loves everybody. So it's interesting. So relationships are very important for well-being. Just continue. And M, the next one is meaning. Having some meaning in life. And just like devotees, they have a meaning in life. Isn't it? I mean, just like, I've told the story, I might have told it here before. Before I joined the Krishna consciousness movement, my mother wanted me to be a doctor or something. And I said, why? Which is a meaning question. You know, why? What's the reason? What's the meaning? And she said, to please me. Not please me, please her. So, and I said, that's not a good meaning. So devotees, I mean, real devotees, they have a meaning in life. So I'm just explaining how a devotee of Krishna fulfills all the requirements, even from the material perspective of well-being. Because they have a meaning. What's the meaning of life? Well, first meaning is to become Krishna conscious, love Krishna. Second meaning is to help others. You know, if you think about it, if you don't have a meaning in life, it's miserable. Then you just got to get drunk or something.
You see people when the children leave.
Yeah, the empty nest syndrome.
I have a sister-in-law suffering that dramatically because they don't have the meaning anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like they get sick. Or when sometimes the husband dies or wife dies, the other one dies pretty quickly afterwards. So, because that's the whole meaning of their life. So we have a meaning that's transcendental, transcendent, which is, so it's not dependent on anything in this world. Even if everything is taken away, we still have that meaning.
Probably, a lot of that's a symptom, right? It's symptoms of the age because everyone's on the phone for 5 minutes, So,
Five?
well,
Only wish.
whatever, There's no connection, there's no real connection, it's just a temporary, illusionary thing.
Well, there's no relationship, that's our relationship.
Yeah.
And there's no meaning. If you ask people, what's the meaning of your life?
Facebook.
Like one time Prabhupada asked, he was with some printers in Japan, Dynapan printing. This is a famous story. And he asked the junior salesman, what's your meaning in life, basically? And the salesman pulled his business card, which is at the bottom of the stack of everyone else's business cards, and put it on the top. That was his meaning. But even if you achieve that, it's a very miserable life to not have any ultimate meaning in life. What's the purpose of life? Tata Brahma Jigyasa, as the Vedanta Sutra says, the purpose of life is to look for the absolute truth. So this is another thing that's very important. I mean, it's very important for devotees to be, for their well-being, to understand these points. And the final one, PERMA, is achievements. In other words, you have to feel that you're accomplishing something in this world. And that doesn't necessarily mean something external, that you have to make more money, you have to have a bigger house, or something like that. It means, or you have more disciples, whatever. It means basically you're making progress towards Krishna. So when you have these factors, and this is interesting psychological analysis, then you have well-being. Well-being means that you're more likely to be healthy, physically, morally, spiritually, etc. And you're happy, real happiness. Not the happiness that comes from the first one, P, we talk about P. The personal happiness where you're just like touching the sense objects with your senses. I mean, that's not happiness there. So anyways, that's my take on positive psychology.
I think Prabhupada said do something practical.
Yeah, do something practical. Yeah, it was that whole experience with my godbrother Vishal. He would always stand outside the Vrindavan temple when Prabhupada was going on his morning walk and say, Jai Prabhupada, Jai, Jagat Guru. And Prabhupada looked around and saw the grounds were dirty. He said, do something practical.
But even that achievements, like that practicality will give that sense of achievement.
Yeah, the practicality is serving the mission. We've done something.
Practical means that, you're engaged.
You're engaged, not just
locked in your mind.
yeah, not just sitting around like the Babajis
Exactly.
in Radhakund. I mean, there may be a few bona fide Babajis there, but I have friends who stay there and they tell me that most of the Babajis are engaged in illicit life. And so we gotta is an American expression. Anyway, so we should I like the word gotta. Anyway, so we got to do something for Prabhupada, do something for Krishna. And then we feel like satisfied. So all these different ingredients lead to well-being, personal well-being.
It's off the track with Vishal Prabhu, that story of bringing the entry, Prabhupada, I have the entry, I was told that this will protect you from Maya.
Yeah.
Krishna, and Prabhupada said Krishna can kick your Maya with one, thousands of universes away with one swift kick.
Yeah, with the tip of his toe. Yeah.
Isn't it like the studies from Greece, the blue zone?
Oh no, that's something different.
Similar thing.
Now the blue zones is a health.
Yeah.
It's health. It's not only Greece. It was actually, there's several blue zones around the world where people are generally mostly vegetarians. They live the longest.
Yeah.
But there are studies that when people have the most satisfaction in life, they're healthier and live longer. Yeah.
No question, right? A lot of us may agree or not, but we're kind of attracted to the reality of all the books presented by Prabhupada.
Yeah.
That it is not a place fit for a gentleman.
Yes.
It is. Somewhere in the Bhagavatam says we should be a little callous to the material energy.
Yes.
And somewhat it drew us all in anyway. We had to give up so many things. Everything seemed a little bit negative to what's available in this world.
Yes.
But still we were attracted.
I think that most of us old folks, you're an old folk too.
29,
29 plus 40. But there was a certain mood in society of rebelling. So I think that I'm talking about attracting people now.
Yeah.
And also there's a Vedic statement which Prabhupada has quoted, Vishwam Purnam Shukayate. Vishwam means like, Lord Chaitanya is Vishwambar, so Vishwam means the universe. Vishwambar is the maintainer of the universe. Purna, the universe is Shukayate, the universe is blissful basically. If one is Krishna consciousness.
I think that Deepa just probably devil's advocate, but you use the terminology in the zone.
Yeah.
Go with the flow. And I picked up, I shouldn't have, but I picked up to say, well, it's not exactly something nowadays, it's something from 60 years.
But that's true, that's true.
And then we're saying now we're trying to attract people, but on the other hand, you're saying we're trying to attract people now, whereas there was some mood before of renouncing this world.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm asking, well, is that true? Is it true that that mood of people, an innate mood of recognising something wrong in this world
Yeah.
and wanting to leave it is still not there? Maybe covered over to some degree, but innate, you know?
That's an interesting question. The people want, yes, that mood is that something's wrong and we need something else. Now, I've seen in Krishna consciousness, you know, as one progresses, hopefully things progress, 50 years, that the mood is no longer wanting to leave, it's wanting to join. Like, I mean, I'll just say my own psychology, if I can reveal my mind, it's just that I don't personally, I'm not personally hankering to go back and die. You know, maybe I'm enjoying so much in this world, but hey, all the big plates of prashad and kishore things. I come here just to eat. Anyway, so not really. That's a negative. Anyway, so I'm just thinking, you know, I just want to Manma Janmani Shvare Bhavata Bhakti Harikati. I'm not saying I'm on that level, but I'm thinking that I just want whatever Krishna wants, you know. Because if I simply the desire to get out of this world is a desire for bhakti. And I mean, if Krishna wants, yeah, we'll go wherever. But in the Bhagavatam it says, Narayana Parak Sarve Naprateshtina Briviti Swarga Bhavargadara Keshu up until the Artatarshna. That someone is a topmost devotee of Narayana, he sees heaven, hell, or going back to God as the same, up until the Artatarshna. So I think I'm not saying that I recommend that if someone is not ready to think like that. Certainly, if it's an impetus to someone to join the Krishna consciousness to get the hell out of here, do it. You know, if someone is like that, then use that, because that's a stepping stone.
I see what you mean, though. We have to mature that mood eventually to accept that staying in this world and doing whatever Krishna wants.
If Krishna wants.
And you want.
Not just stay in this world, but whatever, if Krishna wants to be here, Krishna wants to be in the spiritual world, he's God, and he can do anything he wants. But in the beginning, you have this principle of Chatur Vidha Bhajanti Mam. You know the verse? That people come to Krishna consciousness because they're in distress. Okay, so for those people, you stress the material world is there. And you're just a bag of stool, buddy. And your tongue is just like leading you to death. You know, this is our philosophy. I'm not denying that. But you can stress different things when you're dealing with people. I mean, you have to understand your audience when you're dealing with people. And in the 1960s and 70s, even the 80s, you know, I think more negativity was actually very useful. But now I'm seeing that what I see is that you present people not so much with the negativity in the material world is miserable, but one thing is mission. You know, what's the purpose of your life? That's one of my main tools when I'm talking to people. I say, what's your purpose? You know, what do you hope to accomplish in this life? You know, meaning. What's the meaning of your life? Are you just gonna get a job? You know, I preach a lot to university students. You know, are you just gonna get old, get a job, get a family, get old, visit your grandchildren, and die? Is that your whole life? Make money? You gotta have something more to that. And so, you know, then. Anyway.
I think the current younger generation want to have more meaning and connection with things.
Yeah.
Like an area we wanted to reject everything our parents told us because we just didn't want that crap, so we just said it's no good.
Yeah.
It was easy for us psychologically. If you say it's crap, well, it's easy to reject.
Yeah.
Right? So then we can become a devotee. What's the problem? Because we don't care what their things are, you know.
Yeah.
But that was bravado and use. But now we know. You know, the young age, people want stuff, but you know, you can pick up an iPhone and get any information. You couldn't do it in those days.
Yeah.
You had to research it to get a library. travel the world. You had to actually do something, you know, with your life to get that.
Now you don't have to do
But
it.
now you just pick up the phone and it's already there, you know. So it's like an overload of information, and with all the bogus philosophies of you can do this, you can do that, you can be anything, you deserve it because you're so special.
Yeah.
So many bogus crap things that they don't know what to do. They're just completely swamped, you know.
Yeah.
So Christian consciousness is in that boat. It's,
And people are lazier now too.
yeah,
And the
they
span of
don't want to work for anything. They just want to order it on the phone.
The span of attention is a lot less. They're impatient. You've got to get something delivered in
My
one.
dad my dad used to say people wouldn't work in iron lung. So that was 4 years ago. So, you know, today, even if you give them instructions, they still can't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Anyway, everybody's different. We bring people to Christian consciousness in different ways. And you know what I'm exploring is this positive way of explaining how, according to the psychologists, if you fulfill these requirements, you'll have a fulfilled life. And these requirements can be perfectly fulfilled only in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
Your perma, yeah.
Maharaj, before I ask my question, I'd just like to say I'm really glad that you've spoken about being positive,
Yeah,
because just recently at the temple we're trying to resurrect our drama group,
that's
and
good.
everybody's really fired up to have Liquid Beauty come out again. And you know, the big ears and the big eyes, the 5 senses, and you know, I was getting really fired up about it. But anyway, I'm glad you spoke about that. Maybe it's not such a good idea.
Well, I like that. I like the play Liquid Beauty because it was really, it was really humorous.
I got plenty of
But
buckets.
I'd like to ask your thoughts about something.
Yeah.
You're talking about relationships.
Yeah,
And I'm just reminded of a verse in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the purport actually. And Prabhupada says we're the embodiment of, you know, the Lord, and as such we should be very respectful
right.
to everyone. There's, you know, that purport there in the, I think it's the 11th verse of the 9th chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, we start off with the best intentions. We want to follow
Yeah,
Shastra, we want to follow Srila Prabhupada. We start off with the best intentions. Yes, I'm going to be respectful to everyone, realize that the Lord is within everybody.
right.
But that becomes very difficult because lots of people are very sort of nasty or, you know, unkind or...
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Facebook, you know, in this movement, there will be people in the guise of devotees, but they should be neglected. Whereas that verse in the 9th chapter says, so we should not neglect anyone, but treat them with great respect. So I'm trying to...
it depends on what platform of devotional service one is on.
It depends what platform.
Platform of devotional
okay.
service it's on. You know, we're talking about the differences between the different levels of Majjhima Adhikari. Not, of course, the Uttama Adhikari is respectful towards everyone, but even amongst the Majjhima Adhikaris, there's the Kanishta Majjhima, the Majjhima, and the Uttama Majjhima.
Yeah.
So there's different, according to people's realization. Like you had Haridas Thakur, who certainly had people inimical towards him, you know, beating him in so many marketplaces, but he was compassionate towards them. So, of course, neglecting someone doesn't mean having a negative attitude either. You know, you can still pray for someone, but neglect them because you're not able to deal with them. So the word neglectful is interesting.
Action.
Yeah, nirapeksha, completely neutral. Completely neutral. And I like that Liquid Beauty play.
She's a professional actress. She's actually been in Hollywood movies. The latest one was the one... Oh, seriously. The latest one was what was that? The one
Once
that
upon
was
a
filmed
time,
here?
Hollywood, that was the blonde.
Dora the Explorer.
No,
She and
sir.
the husband were both in it, dancing along with Dora. And she's 80. Nandakini. Full of energy.
She doesn't look more than 35.
I know. That's because I look after her.
I mean, there's all sorts of nice plays that we can do, you know, that aren't negative. But I think Liquid Beauty is interesting. It's not, you know, it's funny. It's a funny play. It's not heavy-handed. So I have no problem with that play, you know. Then you just understand
We'll
beauty.
put that on the list then.
The
And if you could recommend any more, that'd be helpful.
They're the short plays we used to do, you know, like
Boatman?
Boatman and Bird in a Cage.
Oh, yeah.
Bird in a Cage. But if you do too many of these, you know, critical plays that are criticizing, you know, the material nature, you have to figure some good one, real positive plays. Not like the Ramayana. Because people won't appreciate that. Hey, Rupa, you have a question?
Yes, Maharaj. We're always like wanting to increase Krishna's family.
Yeah.
Increase the members of Krishna's family. So it's basically two ways, you know, through converts or through by having children. So I remember Tamal Krishna said he.
You're doing both of them.
Trying my best. Remember Tamal Krishna said that he felt that any religious group that was too much in the renounced order and placed not enough emphasis on furthering their movement by having children for the next generation, it folded up.
Yeah, that's a sociological studies bear that out.
So, and I heard one guru in ISKCON saying that he felt that a lot of devotees in ISKCON are not having hardly any children or none at all. Maybe it's because they've been in the renounced order like Brahmachari Ashram, they're like, there's some fear of having children.
Or maybe it's they can't afford it.
Yeah, that's more likely.
Or there's the fear that they won't be able to afford it.
Well, it's hard to, I mean, nowadays things are expensive. I mean, how much do you spend on, let's say if you're living in a city or whatever, you're sending a kid to the uni or something like that. I mean, I guess here in Australia you got free education, right?
No, university have fees.
Oh, they have fees.
Schools have
In a
fees.
school?
Moderate here in Mooloolaba, but they're higher in Sydney, Melbourne, and places like that.
Yeah, so I know in the United States you could become a doctor and end up with $500,000 of debt after you become a doctor. I mean, I have some disciples who became doctors.
We do have free medical.
Oh yeah, free medical. So, but then if you think of paying for children, it's a very expensive. It's like there was one sociologist who said it's an expensive hobby. Just looking at the Vedic culture, when people lived more or less in a rural setting, the children were an asset. I mean, even economically, because you have the older children take care of the young ones, helping with the agriculture and everything like that, or with the rabbinical activities, whatever farmer they were. But now it's very
That's the
expensive.
integrated society. No, we're not integrated.
Yeah, it's very expensive.
Independent.
There was a study in the 90s that said here in Australia each child would cost $1 million to raise it to 16 years of old. Right?
Oh my God.
And you think about that.
It's true.
I mean, where do you get that sort of money?
Krishna.
So I think that's, I mean, yeah.
But
I think-
That was very off-putting.
How
What?
do the Muslims do it where they're having so many children? They're
Well,
taking
one thing
other
is they go on the
countries' votes by
dole.
having children.
One thing is they come to countries like in Europe, and I'm not sure how it works in Australia. The more children they have, the more money they get. So, if you want to do that business, that's
Marriage on this positive perma
yeah.
and the old school of how it was, some people do appreciate being told as it is though.
Yeah.
If they have a distinct problem that you can apply some preaching old school even,
Oh yeah, then we'll use it.
then we're still getting positive results. But we might be coming at it with a sort of it may be a bit unsettling to hear sometimes, but some people will appreciate the direct,
Yeah, we don't hide the fact that we have these, the philosophy of the material energy. But what keeps people in this society, in Krishna consciousness, is the positive stuff. I mean, you can just all the time chant, I'm not the body, but it doesn't really make you that happy.
One thing I was very, excuse me, disturbed whenever I did have a so-called problem when I was in the new years of consciousness.
Yeah.
The senior whom I was mixing with primarily just said chant Hare Krishna and it will all go.
It all go away.
I felt there was something I needed a little bit more of.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up with a lot of psychological cases. People need a little medicine, you know, or people broke their arm. Just chant Hare Krishna, the arm will heal, or something like that.
Well, that's just, you know, that's just drawing personalism. You're not
Yeah.
caring for them. You're just,
Everybody's an individual and has to be approached separately. But my experience is what really keeps you in Christian consciousness is the love, the devotion, and the relationship. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention when we got to the R of Perma is the relationship not only with Krishna, but with all the devotees. And we hear from the nectar instruction, the Dati Pratikra Nati Gunya Markyati Prichati. Prabhupada actually states, you know, that's the verse that says the devotees engage in loving exchanges, giving prasad and accepting prasad, giving gifts, accepting gifts with freedom of mind and confidence. So, Prabhupada said the movement actually grows through these loving exchanges with devotees. So, I find that people grow spiritually through loving exchanges. Yes, you can have an impetus and convince people the material world is miserable, but it doesn't really stick after a long time. You know, I could say to people, you know, just trying to enjoy your senses, and they're still overeating it with prashadam.
yeah.
You know, isn't it? I could say, you know, vacho vegam, manasa kroda vegam, jiva vegam, pasha vegam. You got to control your tongue, belly, judgment, mind, anger, and words. And, you know, it's true. But how do you do it with positivity? It has to be something positive. Why do I control my tongue? Because I want to please Krishna. I want to do, you know, at least have good health.
You're negating things all the time. How can you be happy? They accept the higher truth. And
Yeah. I mean, what works, sometimes, yes, sometimes we just have to tell people, you know, the material world is miserable. And Krishna does that, certainly. But Krishna also presents a heck of a lot of stuff positive, you know, all the pastimes and everything like that. And, even Gita is mostly positive.
what about the story in Prabhupada who was in Hawaii, and then the next one there was complaining about the Harrods. You know, and the devotees, oh, you know, we've got cars, they just walk around in pajamas all day singing, and you know, they don't do anything. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, yeah, you can join up as well. They complain about the devotees, and Prabhupada said, yeah, you can join.
Good job. You don't have to work either.
They couldn't do that. They could complain, but they couldn't join up.
But, you know, in Hawaii, Prabhupada called the surfers sufferers. You know, so there is a negative aspect. You know, it's a reality. We got to call something what it is.
He flew over Parramatta, which is now the central hub city within Sydney. And it's a city now, but he flew over and one devotee, I forget who it was, maybe a Moga or something, said, that's Parramatta.
Parramatta.
Prabhupada said, oh, I'm not that simply crazy.
How do you fly over Parramatta?
He's flying out of Sydney elsewhere.
Oh,
I wanted to
okay.
ask,
Maybe was his
Yeah, one of the
Could have been Moga.
Yeah.
is Lord Shiva then to be thought of as our father?
Yes. In one sense, you know, the father in the material world. He's just as much our father as, you know, the father you had in this lifetime. He gave you the material body. I mean, really. And Durga's our mother. So we have to respect, and it's not that we necessarily have to have deities of Durga and Shiva on the altar, but we respect. I mean, traditionally in Vaishnava, many Vaishnava temples, you had a Durga mandap outside of the temple where they had Shiva and Durga. So, and Lord Shiva is the best of the Vaishnavas. Durga is his wife. You know, she chants the name of Ram, and now she chants Hare Krishna because Haridas Thakur initiated her. So she's pretty good.
There was a psychologist did a meme, a picture of a psychologist with his feet on the patient.
Yeah.
On the patient.
Oh my God.
And it said, it seems to me from what you're saying that many people take advantage of.
So any other questions before we take Prasad? Yeah.
Just sometimes wonder, I'm reading Chaitanya Bhagavatam and just what Chaitanya and his family went through, like, you know, for example, like he had eight sisters that died.
Yeah, they died.
His brother sort of left early.
Yeah.
His father died. I'm just saying something, and then his wife died as well. Snake bite. Or something like that.
From
You know?
separation,
Yeah,
yeah.
just saying, like, how much suffering, I mean, what chance we've got? I just wonder, you know, like, what he went through.
You've got no chance, mate.
So the point is you're dealing with something on a different level, which involves like vipralambha, separation, and intense spiritual emotions. When you're talking about, you know, in all of Krishna's pastimes as Ram or whatever type, you have these intense, like, what appear to be painful experiences, but they're exchanges of rasa for them. They're not, like if someone died, you know, your children die or something like that, it's not the same thing. It's hard to understand. It is definitely hard to
I
understand.
mean, what suffering I went through, it's nothing like.
I mean, look at Sita Devi being sent away. Now, I'm not even talking about her being kidnapped by Radha, but Ram just sending her away when she was pregnant.
It just makes you wonder, really, you know.
Yeah, but something else is happening on a deep spiritual level, Krishna leaving Vrindavan, which is the mood of separation, which when one is experiencing intense emotion of separation, one is connected with the beloved on the spiritual platform. In the material platform, you're connected with your conception of the beloved, because you're never real. There's no real meeting of minds. Even if you're together with someone, let's say you're holding someone's hand, you're not really holding their hands. They're not the body. It's negative. You understand? You're not really.
So there's no real soulful connection?
Well, with devotees, there can be. There can be. But, you know, the real connection is on this the platform of soul. And even with devotees, if you're feeling separation, you're connected with that devotee, like the spiritual master or something like that. You're connected with that particular person. But materially, if we look at Krishna's pastimes through material eyes, then we just see it as like misery. Like Krishna leaving Vrindavan is like misery for the gopis. But that misery was a form of ecstasy. Yugayatam yanishena chakshusha pravishayam shanyayatam jagat sarvam a moment's separation, the Yuga cycle. I think it's time for prasad. Whoop. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Holiness be Krishna Goswami Ki.